Welcome. I'm Tina Tang, and we will be doing an interview, a live interview with Coach Jessie Rard. And today we're going to be talking about transgender transformation, and Coach Jessie is going to be sharing his experiences, talking about the emotional, the hormonal, and surgical experiences. And I see that Coach Jessie is on, and I'm waiting for him to join us. So hang on there, Coach Jessie. I know you're coming on soon. Hi, Anne Marie. There should be there we go. Here comes Coach Jessie. I love it. Hang on, everyone. Coach Jessie is coming. I know Coach Jessie is coming. There we go.
There we are. Now we're here.
Fantastic.
Okay. Oh, I'm so out of frame, but I got all the pride swag.
I love it. I love it. I was just starting off the introduction that you were going to come on and that we are going to be talking about transgender transformation, your experiences in terms of hormones, surgery, and emotion. And I'm going to first hand it over to you to do a little bit of an introduction so people can get to know who you are.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Jessie. I use he and they pronouns, so I kind of switch back and forth and offer kind of whatever people are comfortable using. I am a coach, personal trainer. I am a circus artist, so I specialize in teaching flexibility. I teach contortion. I work with hypermobile individuals, and I also teach strength training and weightlifting for hypermobile folks, as well as working with Tina in Straight Up Strong. It is such a fun program. Outside of work, I am an enthusiast of all things gardening and foraging and cooking all the delicious things that I find.
That's what I love looking at your feet to see what their family has grown and what you guys are making for dinner that night. Almost everything is from your garden. Could you share with everyone how old you are and then how old you were when you started the transition?
Yeah, I just turned 28. And I came out when I was about 19. I was able to start hormone therapy at 20 and then got my top surgery by 21. So I actually was able to do it quite quickly, though it didn't feel quick at the time.
Do you mind if I go straight into the questions that you and I had gotten over the past few days?
Yeah, feel free.
So the first question I'll just read off is, my nephew is transgender. He's 25 and it's been about 7 years since his surgery. He's thriving and I love him so much. I'm hoping to gain some insight to what it's been like for him. And also when I refer to when he was a young girl growing up, I'm not sure if I should use the pronoun she or he. And also how would you, or do you think he might feel about himself when he was a child?
Yeah, I loved getting this question. So if you kind of look at the timeline on that, they're saying that their nephew's 25 and got top surgery, I'm assuming is usually what people are referencing, especially at that age, 7 years ago. So that means that this young trans kid had so much support. Like, yes, they may have been scared when they were coming out. They may have had to fight for some of that support, but being able to get surgery at what is at that point 18, like possibly still living with their parents, maybe just right into college, something like that timeline means that hopefully they have had so much support to be able to do that younger and quicker, and having to at that time, so 7-8 years ago when they transitioned, when I transitioned, you had to be on hormone therapy for a year before you were granted access to surgery. So that means I know that they were on hormone therapy when he was young enough to have the parents sign off, right? Starting it at 16, 17, 18, you have to have your parents sign off. So that just made me really happy to hear that not only does this person have an aunt or someone that is supportive and being a wonderful ally, but that the parents would have been quite supportive too. And it's just wonderful to see like people are now kind of past their transition and really like thriving and growing and becoming adults, which is wonderful. When you look back at childhood, it is pretty individual. Everyone's going to have their own preferences. When I look at my old photos, I cut all my hair off in 5th grade. So most of my old photos, you would never even know. You're like, that's a little boy. And then there's like 2 years in high school where like maybe I look like a girl. And then, so my timeline looks pretty continuous. We recently had a family event and my family was like, hey, we're doing this slideshow, and sent me the slideshow just to make sure I was comfortable with the photos they chose, which was incredibly sweet. And all the photos were like me with no hair. You know, I looked like a tiny little boy. So that continuity is easier for me, and I don't mind looking back at old photos. The more feminine looking ones are harder to look at sometimes, but it also just looks like a completely different human. Like I don't feel like that's me. So I don't have as much of a problem. Some people are more sensitive, and so if you have family members that will kind of run that by you, or like my mom asked me to send her a complete overhaul, like all new pictures. She swapped out every picture that looked the least bit kind of like feminine from high school, and like put all new pictures up in her house. My aunt put up all new pictures. When you are referring, so yeah, just ask people what they're comfortable with is really the thing, because everyone has a different opinion. When you're referring to people, it wasn't like I consciously identified as a woman and then decided to change. I've just always been this way and never had, up until 20-ish, never really had the words to tell people who I was. I was just being told, you're a woman, or you're growing into a beautiful woman, or a young lady, and this felt really awful and scary, just not understanding it. So my sister has kind of evolved in like how she refers to like all our fun childhood stories. So at one point she used to go back and say, oh, when Jessie was a girl, and then she learned more, and she switched to at one point to saying when we thought Jessie was a girl, which I thought was hilarious. Or like when I thought I had a sister, so she'll tell a story and she'll be like, back when I thought I had a sister, this blah blah blah, if gender kind of mattered. Like I was in plays and I played some female characters, and so she was like, back when we thought Jessie was a girl, he got to play Helen Keller in a play, you know, things like that. But I had a Facebook memory come up recently, and it was a photo my sister took of me when I had cut my hair short, and it was like spiked up all cool. And I read the caption, knowing that the caption had said, like, this is my sister, she cut her hair herself, it's so cool. And I looked, and my sister had gone back and edited the caption on that Facebook post from 7+ years ago now, actually longer, 10 years ago, and was like, this is my brother, he did this haircut himself, this is awesome. That is A+ allyship. My sister has like gotten it down to a science. So I would say, when at all possible, refer to people as their current gender, using their current pronouns, because we really have always been this way. It's just was kind of secret. It was hidden to us. It was hidden to everyone around us. We didn't have those words yet. If gender plays into the story and you're not at risk of outing somebody's past, then you can kind of speak in that way, like when I was playing a bunch of female characters. However, I am more open about my entire story as somebody that identifies as more non-binary. I'm not trying to be a cisgender man. I'm not trying to like play that role.
I love that. Thank you. That was a beautiful experience, especially how your sister has become this amazing ally, as she found what's the best way to, I guess, connect in that way.
Yeah, she's been kind of just like changing her vocabulary over the years, and she'll like go Google something and she'll come back to me and she'll be like, I found this. Does this make sense for you? Like, does this match how you feel? Instead of asking me to like teach her things. And then she's just found more things and kind of evolved her language all by herself. So,
I have the crying emoji right now. It's the crying.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, don't cry.
the next question is, I'd be interested to know what Jessie found the most surprising or unexpected impact or effect of your transition, if you don't mind sharing.
Yeah, I had to think really hard about this one. And one of the most surprising things was just how life has changed since. So I came out in 2013, and when I came out, there was not as good of medical care as there is now. It's definitely still a struggle now, but we run under something called informed consent, which means I can go to a doctor and I say, this is how I identify, this is the healthcare I would like. There's a lot more information now, and all they do is they go through this paper that says, here are the risks of testosterone or estrogen, here's what it will do to your body, and sign the paper that you understand these risks. That wasn't a thing. So when I came out, you had to, nothing was covered by insurance, but you had to see a therapist for a whole year. You had to live as your preferred gender for a year with no other support than a therapist, paid out of pocket. And then the therapist would give you the name of a doctor. You couldn't just go straight to a doctor. So you had to do this whole charade for a year that was very difficult, then get on hormones for a year before they would deem you ready to then have surgery. And because of that healthcare process, the way I identified was shaped by my need to transition and my need to access medical care. So I actually had to fake being more binary. I was like, I'm a man, I need to be a man, like, so that my doctors would take me seriously. And I was pretty young, so I ended up convincing myself of that. And then it wasn't until COVID when all of us kind of had to sit with our brains and learn more about ourselves. And, you know, people got back into therapy during that whole freeze during COVID. That's when I then came out as non-binary. And I was like, oh, this rigid binary gender structure was really put in place by my doctors at the time when healthcare was different. And now I can be myself without being strictly one side or the other side of gender. So I think the most surprising thing was to go through an entire gender transformation just to come out as non-binary on the other side.
That's a big one. That's really,
so, yeah, that's a really big one. And
yeah.
I'm really thankful that that is not the experience of people nowadays and my friends who are currently transitioning. Really thankful. I have friends who are non-binary. I have friends who've gotten surgery without having to take hormones. There's not like a forced structure anymore. So thankful. It did not negatively impact me in any significant way because I was going to need all of these steps anyway. But I just ended up coming out with some different pronouns later. The only other really, truly surprising thing was just how good life could be. I had a really great childhood, and then right at puberty, my brain just like, I was dealing with depression and anxiety, and I had no idea. I just felt wrong all the time, and I didn't know what it was until, you know, from like 13 to 19 when I had words for it. And then transition is quite a struggle, especially younger, and trying to like also at the same time get out on my own, live on my own for the first time. All of that coinciding was very hard. And now that I'm fully identified as being done transitioning, life is great. Like, the hard things in life are no longer tied to my gender. The hard things in life are no longer tied to how society perceives me because of the groups I'm in and how privileged I am to have surrounded myself with allies. So back then, I was like, I need this thing, but I just didn't know how amazing of a life doing that would get me. I thought, like, I'm doing this so I can survive. And now I'm just like, oh, wow, this is great. This is way past survival.
This goes into the next question that we had gotten is, what's one thing you wish more people would be cognizant of for someone who's in transition?
Mm-hmm. This is a really good one. And this one isn't, I would say this is not tied to having somebody doing a medical transition. So there's also something called a social transition, which is where somebody might change their name, they might change their pronouns, they might dress a little different, maybe, maybe not. But they are choosing not to have surgery or pursue hormones at this time. And for the social transition, it's almost more difficult because people still kind of see certain traits and go, oh, I think that's a girl, or I think that's a boy. And it's harder for society and strangers and family to make that change without all of the things that hormones give us. Like my family really, really got pronouns well when I got a beard. It took a while. So the thing to know is that the hardest part of being trans, the reason why being trans is scary and hard and people are so worried about their friends and family that are coming out, isn't being trans. Like that's not hurtful, that's not sad in any way. It's dealing with society, dealing with being afraid of being viewed wrong, being afraid if somebody is hateful, or if somebody sees me and is kind of scared or unsettled by me, like how then they're going to react. So knowing that being trans is not dangerous in and of itself, but being trans in our society can be. So when somebody comes out, the biggest fear their friends and family have is, oh, this is the worst thing ever. This is horrible. I'm scared for your health and safety. But don't direct that fear at the person. Try to kind of direct it more outwards and help them create a nice, safe place to exist so that being trans doesn't have to be bad and scary and hurtful.
I like that. I'm going to go into, I think you might have answered, these are some of the questions I had. How long and what was involved in your hormonal transition? That sounds like it's about a year.
Yeah, do you want me to go through like the kind of whole timeline?
Yeah, because I think most of us don't know like what you have to do.
Yeah, so before the informed care model, it was just, buy new clothes and, change your name if you want to, do all these things to try to maybe look how you want, to get people to use the pronouns you want for a year. That is terrifying. Thankfully, that doesn't exist anymore. So you can receive hormone therapy and medical care pretty easily now. Mostly Washington, California, Oregon, places like that, much easier. And hormone therapy is a different timeline for testosterone and estrogen. So for testosterone, it's about a year to 2 years is when you'll see kind of all of the main changes for hormones. And then after that, you do kind of progress, but you progress in a way that any man would between like 25 and 35, right? So the beard takes longer to fill in, but that's all standard. And I wouldn't say that that's like part of the transition itself. That's just aging as now a man or aging as a woman. Estrogen does take longer to see the effects. So a lot of trans women won't see really intense effects until like 6 to 8 months on hormones, and they'll get most of their effects in that second year, third year, as it takes a little more time to kind of soften and to redistribute body fat and things like that. So that's going to be year 2 to 3, unless somebody just responds really, really well naturally with their genetics. Testosterone is the 1 to 2 years. It hits pretty powerfully, hits pretty quickly. I did something that was called a non-binary transition before there was any structure to it. So I did a lot of research, and I was majoring in chemistry and science in college. So I was pretty confident in my ability to like read some medical literature and take my transition the way I wanted. And so I did much, much lower doses. And I am not even taking what is considered a full dose 8 years later. So I've really been able to kind of have myself go through this puberty slower. It gave me a lot better vocal transformation. I think my voice didn't crack really intensely. It was able to take the time it needed to lower slowly as I was doing a lower dose. So it did take me quite longer than that 1 to 2 years. it meant I was stuck in menopause for a lot longer than most trans men, which was not fun at all.
I was gonna that's gonna be my question. Like what's the amount of time that it is normally for someone going through testosterone therapy to go through menopause, and how long has it been for you?
Yeah, my my mom had some medical things go on when she was like 23, I believe. And so she had to have a hysterectomy, and she went through menopause at 23. And so then
Wow.
when I went through menopause at 20, I was like, I went through menopause before you did, you know, because she was talking about how like this thing was awful, but also happened so long ago that whatever, I don't remember how going through menopause was. And I was like, I went through menopause even earlier. When you start testosterone, you're just substituting, you're putting testosterone into your system, and it kind of cancels out the estrogen pretty quickly because it's a strong hormone. So if I'm going to guess, I think that somebody starting at a full dose is going to go through menopause fairly quickly in the course of like maybe 3-4 months.
Ooh.
It's going to
Hmm.
be, it's pretty fast. It's fast. It's a little rough. They tend to get a lot more of the male puberty intensity hitting than having to deal with intense menopause symptoms.
Hmm.
Um, Mine was probably 8 to 10 months because I was
Hmm.
going so slow.
Hmm.
I I didn't stop getting a period until 4 to 6 months on hormones, maybe even longer. And there
Hmm.
was this really intense period where the dose was like right in the middle, so I was getting a period that lasted for like an entire month. Very
Ooh.
uncomfortable,
Oh yeah.
not fun. You know, very, yeah, that like random spotting, not having a cycle that you could depend on, all sorts of weird things happening that is quite similar to some people's experience with menopause.
Hmm.
And at that point, I was like, time to up the dose because this is not healthy
Yeah.
right now to
Yeah.
sit in that middle point, not having much of either hormone. But I got the hot flashes. I cried at every single commercial, ever, all of them. I was just crying through college. Um, and at the same time starting to get this like male puberty, so I was also eating everything in my fridge at all times, sleeping 14 hours a day, like just wild experiences. And that was almost the whole first year because I was committed to going so slow into it.
Yeah. The going slow, I was curious if there's a traditional, you said like the traditional amount of hormones someone might take. Is that something the doctor, is it choice also? Like you prefer a lower dosage over a longer period of time? I know you have more of a science background, so you understood that, but I didn't know if the
Yeah.
doctors also, like you have to advocate for yourself to have that slower path.
If you want a non-binary transition, you can now request that, and the doctors
Mm.
do have a little more knowledge of how they would like to help you progress through that. You know, it's like you need to be on this dose for, it's usually 6 weeks before you get up to the next one and kind of gradually ramp up, which
Hmm.
really helps manage some of the, I don't want to say anger in some people. If you are naturally have kind of strong emotions or anger that runs in your family, yes, it can, that like, it's puberty, right? It is
Hmm.
puberty. So you can get angry on testosterone. I had a point where I get really frustrated, but ramping up slow helps you progress through that smoothly. So yes, now there's a little more structure depending on what doctor you go to. They might have more information on that. It used to just be, here's your dose because you're an adult and you should be having a full male adult dose of 0.5 cc's of testosterone. I started at 0.1 and I'm at 0.35, and I'm going to stay there probably forever. So I
Oh, is
don't
that how,
need that
is it's something that
dose.
one has to take for life, or does it depend on like is yours because your
Yeah,
gradual path? Mm.
it is a medication for life. I can, myself and anyone else who has not had a hysterectomy or has not had an orchiectomy for women on estrogen, they can go off of their hormones because they still have the body parts that will make them hormones. However, it will be making the opposite hormone, and you will experience some level of um, backsliding depending on how old you are, how long you had been transitioning. So Anyone who needs to go off of hormones can, as long as they have not had those surgical interventions, as long as they still have those body parts.
Mhm.
But if you want to, and then anyone who has had those surgeries will need to be on hormones because their bodies will naturally not make any hormones afterwards.
Okay.
So I will be on testosterone for the rest of my life, even though I do not want to get a hysterectomy. And people who have gotten that will then also have to be on hormones for the rest of their lives. Yeah.
It's so interesting. I think I think in everyday life, people underestimate the power of hormones in so many aspects of our physical life. Um, so I know it's almost a half an hour, but I have two questions. So one is, let me cover the shorter one. Has your transformation affected your fitness abilities or capacity, or has it been unaffected?
It's definitely been affected, but that's just the privilege of testosterone. So I gained muscle mass, even though I wasn't working out early in my transition, just because managing transition was a full-time job in and of itself at the time, and mental health. My shoulders got broader. I put on muscle even when I wasn't trying to. And as somebody who is hypermobile, I had a lot of tendon thickening, which is something that happens on testosterone. And that really, really helped me. It kind of helped heal from shoulder dislocations that I had previous to transitioning. So it really, really helped my hypermobility. It did absolutely help me be able to gain strength. Thankfully, I kept all my flexibility, which is part of the reason why I did a slow transition, to try to stay on a low dose, because people were kind of colloquially saying, well, men aren't as flexible, so you won't be able to be a contortionist anymore. All that are lies. I could take a full dose and still absolutely maintain my flexibility.
I'm
But at the
smiling
time,
because you're one of the most bendiest people I know. So yeah, you're more flexible than most flexible people. So yes.
yeah. But yeah, it definitely did help with my fitness, just because testosterone will absolutely do that. And just kind of changed my bodies in a way that now I would say I look more like a fit man in the like 25 to 30-year-old range, and have that shape as well. So I wouldn't say, it's not like there's not as big of a difference. I know it's kind of a hot button topic with all of the like, can trans people play sports with cisgender people and what teams should we be placed on? It's such a hot button topic right now. So I don't want to act like, oh, testosterone is this like huge magical thing. You still have to train. There are still, incredible women that are going to outtrain me forever, never having testosterone in their system. But it did help me gain muscle slightly easier than I was gaining it as somebody taking estrogen and being hypermobile, meaning I just don't gain muscle or strength quickly at all. So naturally, as a hypermobile person, and it's a struggle. So that did help me, and it mostly helped me not gain any advantage in sport, but just manage my own hypermobility and my own pain.
Mm. The last question, so to end our lovely interview, for all your honesty and just openness, is can you share, because I know that you get this question a lot about your mastectomy, and for anyone undergoing your experience with the mastectomy, and then actually common questions that women might ask you about, like, and that you advise them.
Yeah, absolutely. That's been a fun thing that I didn't expect, was then to be able to like provide info to some cisgender women who are going through difficult things, like whether they're getting mastectomy due to cancer risk or whatever it may be, or a reduction. Some of my friends have had reductions. It was a pretty easy process for me. So when you take 100% of the breast tissue out and you get a nice flat chest afterwards, the healing time is easier because there's no weight to pull on the scars. So I'm able to, wear a binder after surgery. Everything's really flat. It's quicker. It's surgery. It's of course painful, but it's less painful than if you were to get a reduction, and it's much less painful than anyone getting kind of implants that has more weight kind of pulling on the scars there. So the full mastectomy is going to be the easiest healing time. I think I was on pain meds for like 3 days. I had quite a large chest, so I had reduced mobility for quite a while. Like it took me a couple months to be able to dress myself in anything that wasn't buttoned down. Always buy the buttons, or even better, the shirts that just snap. Always get those. Everyone just goes to Goodwill before they get surgery and they're like, I need button down shirts so I can dress myself. Take food down out of your cupboards. I couldn't reach anything. I just could not reach anything. The one biggest thing that my surgeon didn't tell me that affected me the most was, as you are healing around your scars, your nerves will start to try to, reconnect as you're going through that healing. And that is a sharp, stabbing pain. So that is very uncomfortable. The quicker it happens post-surgery, the faster you're healing. So it's a really good sign. But I'd be out in public and just get like a random nerve twinge, and they're quite sharp and they're quite sudden. And I would just be like, and grabbing my chest in public. So at this point, I would just joke and I'd be like, God bless America, or it's like, I made that joke all the time. But it can feel weird to like have that in public and be like holding your chest in public. That could just be a weird thing to go through.
But maybe not in New York City. No.
Yeah, maybe not in New York
Yeah.
City. It's easier in New York City. They don't care as much.
No.
But that was the one thing that I like really wasn't told that was surprising. And then I had to go like look up what's happening to me. Is this a normal pain? Is this okay? So that's to be expected. And really the thing that I've gotten to tell most people, thankfully, is that like, one, the doctors won't set you up with a physical therapist. Go get physical therapy. I don't know why doctors don't consider this something that you should get physical therapy for. You don't cut any muscles. It's surface level surgery, which is quite nice, but you still need to retrain that range of motion. And anybody who thinks like, but I'm an athlete, can I still be an athlete afterwards? Get physical therapy, get matched with somebody who understands your needs and can help you not only just go back to like reaching overhead in the cupboard, but like can fully go back to sport. Because I stopped training for a while, but now I'm still doing contortion, like sitting all the way in my head, doing handstand training, all these things that are the huge range of motion. And surgery has not stopped that at all. So people worrying about being able to do, push-ups and pull-ups or handstands or anything like that, overhead pressing, none of this is going to stop you from being an athlete, even if this is surgery you're undergoing at 40, 50, 60. This is not the end of your athletic pursuit.
I know whether it's this type of surgery or something else, did you have some go-to for healing scars? Go-to whatever it was,
Oh, yeah.
medications or lotions?
I was terrible at scar care. I was like, it's done. I'm free. Go party. Like I have quite big scars now because of it, but I don't mind personally. Silicone is the #1 scar care item. So using silicone that comes in scar strips, especially while the incisions are fresh, you can put a silicone strip over it. And then once things are healed enough, cannot recommend enough just like scar massage, which contrary to popular belief, it's massage with like no oil, right? Because you want to actually move the tissue and make sure that there's as little scar buildup as possible. You don't just want to be moving your hand along the surface. So that, and then once the incisions are healed, then you can start massage without anything, and then also putting like silicone-based creams and things like that on the scars, and that will make all the difference if you're somebody who really wants to minimize the amount of visible scarring you have.
Thank you so much, Coach Jessie. Is it okay if I mentioned that you were thinking you were probably going to do another live, like Transgender 101 for your audience?
We got so many questions, and I know we wanted to keep it pretty close to a half hour. So we got so many, I'll probably I'll try to find a day to do another live or something and put another question box out, just because we got so many. And I did want to keep this one kind of towards your audience and the things that I've had in common with the women that you are working with. That really surprised me, I think, about transitioning now that meeting more older women, and I'm like, oh, we have the same experiences.
Uh-huh.
What is happening?
It's actually quite refreshing.
Yeah,
Oh, that you don't
I
have
have something in common with this.
you physically experience it, because most cisgender women are not even going to think about it until they're literally in it. I didn't think about menopause until going through it, and then had to ask my mom, who's now 85, and she never told me about it until now when I said, when did you go through it? She's like, oh, same age as
And then she
you.
was like, oh, that was a while ago. Let me think about it. Because I went and asked my mom, and she was like, that was forever ago. I don't remember. You're on your own. Like, figure it out, you know? She was like,
Exactly.
I don't remember. And I was like, well, this is not fun.
Exactly. So, Coach Jess, I don't want to take too much of your time. I want to thank you so much for some of the questions that come in, that, information, things that I don't know. And I appreciate your openness and your patience.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for doing this with me. I've loved all of you have some really great informational lives that you've put on. So it's really special that you asked me to do one as well.
Have a good rest of the day, everyone.
Bye. Thank
Bye.
you all.